Us. Hello. Us, Frederick, Paul, Sensei, Claudius, Marco. Good to see you, man. Us, Rachel, Al Bellamy. Good to see you. Hello. Welcome. Is that bright enough? I can't tell. Let me know. I just maybe just turn my computer up. There you go. Look, today I wanted to talk about kata and how to use kata in different ways for your training. And often kata are minimized, especially in Kyokushin. Osbudi, good to see you, man. Namaste. In Kyokushin, I remember once hey Patty, Us, good to see you. Yeah, we had a great time. We met Max. You see Max the bull? Max is a little pup. He's a pup of I'm just looking for a photo. He's a pup of a bull. He's a Brahman bull, and he's just a little teenager. I'm just looking for a quick photo here, if I have one. But boy, he's a big, happy lad. And it puts into perspective the whole concept of Sosai fighting bulls, because a big bull is big. I mean, even Sosai admitted that the bulls he fought weren't the biggest bulls in the world, but there's Max. And that's see Anna there? That lady Anna, that's her station. We went and visited. Anna and I worked in Japan with the Australian government together back in '85, and I hadn't seen her since '88. So it'd been 32 years. And she has a family and a beautiful farm, but she introduced me to young Max there, there you go, trying to get it out of the light. There. There's Max. What else we got there? Big Max. Imagine fighting that thing. Us, Mike, good to see you. Daniel. Us, Sukanta Roy, Us, Namaste. Ken, good to see you from Melbourne. Damien, Paddy. Look, I hope everyone's well, especially you guys down in Victoria. It's just a bit of a nightmare down there. I'm not wearing a gi today. I thought I'd wear a T-shirt instead, one of my old quintessential training T-shirts. But anyway, looking at kata. Us, Torbjörn, Harry, Gaza. Good to see you. To my Patreon crowd, thank you. I had some new Patreon members join. Appreciate that. And I got a little frustrated. If you use Get Response, this Get Response company is someone I pay monthly to be able to send emails out. I know it sounds silly, but they do it in a very efficient way. But their management side just drives me insane. I try to log in all day, so they bill me every month, but there's no record of my account. Can you work that out? And the last time this happened a few years ago, they wiped 100 hours worth of data and everything. Got so frustrated, but they're good at what they do. So I went back, and here it is again. Doesn't matter. We'll sort it out, and I'll move on. I'll find an alternative. But avoid Get Response like the plague. And there you go, Get Response. You should have sorted this out a lot quicker. But what's frustrating is I have a new video and email to send out to my Patreon family. It's a video specifically for Patreon. I saw Daniel Langworthy's name pop up there because Daniel's in the video with me. I use him as my training partner in the video. Raj, good to see you. Us, all the way from Nepal. So anyway, that's I'll get that out to you tonight. I'll work something out how to do it. But anyway, let me just keep going on about the kata, because in Kyokushin we have a reputation for not really having good kata. And it's true. I remember back in '85 when I was living in Japan, I used to train with a Kyokushin group at the Tsukuba University. And at the Tsukuba University, they had a Wadoryu club. And the Wadoryu used to train after the Kyokushin. And when I looked at the two, there were two extremes. The Kyokushin guys would train like maniacs, like we were, kickboxers. We just trained tournament stuff and fight and everything. Then the Wadoryu guys would come on with their eyes rolling, and then they'd be doing their kata. And there's no doubt the kata was stunningly beautiful, but in an hour and a half of training, they wouldn't raise a sweat. It was just all really good kata stuff. Well, you know, that's the catch with researching kata. It has to, you have to do that. You have to research the kata, but it has to be taken in context. You can't lose sight of what the kata is. And if you have faith in what Sosai taught and have faith in what Kyokushin offers, well, then kata are really important, and they offer a really important content, and the way you train will determine what you get out of your kata. I remember 1980, I was living on an island called Thursday Island. If you don't know where that is, look it up. Even some Aussies aren't too sure where it is, but it's a little island, literally 1.5 kilometres square, between Australia and New Guinea. And I was working up there, and Sosai and Bobby Lowe were coming out to Australia for the Nationals in 1980. And I was flying down to be the interpreter for Sosai. And then I got a phone call literally the night before I was due to fly out. And it was one of the guys on the organising committee of the tournament said that Sosai is not coming out. They said, but you've got a ticket, so you can either come down or not come down. It's up to you. And I said, well, if the ticket's there, I'll come down, and I'll compete, if that's okay. And so they said, yeah, sure. So if you want to come down, compete. Now, I competed in that tournament based on the only training I was doing at the time, which was road work and essentially kata. And I remember catching up with Bobby Lowe, Shihan, when I got to Surface in 1980. We developed a friendship in 1976, and we'd been writing letters all along. And anyway, we caught up the night before the tournament, and I said I was fighting, and he said, have you prepared for it? I said, well, I'm prepared as I'm ever going to be, I guess. He said, what have you been doing for your preparation? And I said, what I was doing was I would do a kata with very deliberate technique, and then I would do a kata. This shirt's kind of off, isn't it? Then I would do a kata like I was fighting. So I do the kata exact, boom, boom, bang, bang. And then I do the kata again like I was actually fighting. A bang, running around. And then I do push-ups, sit-ups, squats, and a hill sprint. And that's all I did. And I'd spend an hour doing kata, push-up, sit-up, squats, hill sprint, kata, push-up, sit-up, squats, hill sprint. I didn't have anyone to train with at the time. And then I went down to the tournament, and I actually think technically I fought probably as good as I ever fought, even though it was early days. I was only a brown belt. And I ended up coming second. I went 3 extensions in the semi and then 3 extensions in the final against Jimmy Phillips. And after 3 extensions in the final, we're both like falling on each other. We're so tired. But then he got the decision. So I came second in the tournament, which is okay. But especially when you consider that my only training was kata training. Okay, so there are ways to use kata for the physical as well as the spiritual, the mental, and the intellectual. So you get all the shingi-tai. You want to work the technique as well, but sometimes you work the kata for purely physical conditioning. So what I want to talk about today is ways to do that. Okay, if you've got any comments or input, please put it in so everybody can see. But the first thing I want to say about kata is don't underestimate them and take them a lot deeper than you probably do at the moment. In Kyokushin, like I said, I remember a number of years ago, I've got a good buddy of mine, Greg Sapinski. Greg was a 747 pilot, used to train with me in Brisbane. He went from that to being a Seahawk helicopter pilot. He was in Britain, and he went, because there was no Kyokushin dojo near where he was, he ended up training with an organization called Kusano Ha Shitoryu. So it was a Shitoryu style, and there were Kusano Ha is the line of teaching was Kusano Sensei. Now on to their 3rd generation. And I was in town with him in Japan. We caught up, and then they had a seminar, 2-day seminar, and it was a kata seminar. And so I went along, and he asked permission, of course, and they kind of giggled apparently when this Kyokushin guy was going to come along. And I was, luckily my stances were still okay, but it was before I damaged my knee. And so what we did is we chose one kata. This is a good thing. This is when they did that I like that idea, because that's what I always believe is the only way to do it. You chose one kata for the entire 6 or 7 hours session, and you focus just on that one kata. And at one stage there, one of the old guys walked up to me. He was one of the senior instructors. And he said, "What are you going to do?" I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "But you're Kyokushin, right?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "But Kyokushin don't do kata, right?" I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "No, Kyokushin, they kickbox and fight tournaments. They don't do kata." And I had a bit of a giggle. I said, "Oh, no, we do kata." And I think I caught them by surprise. I'm glad I think my kata were okay. You know, I'm not going to be like win a world kata tournament. But I did make the final in 2000 when I competed in the World Kata. I made the final 6 in the Kyokushin World Championships, and then I snapped my Achilles tendon. So I did, which kata did I do? I did sushi ho with no Achilles tendon. So you can imagine my I'm wobbling everywhere like this. And then it was after that I told the judges that I'd snapped my Achilles in the Kumite semi-final. Anyway, so I made the finals in the kata, and I came 4th in the over 40s worlds. So my kata were average, okay? But for them, they were so surprised that a Kyokushin guy actually knew even one kata. I found that so funny. Mike. Well, Leo, good to see you. As far as I'm aware, kata exists so we can connect to technique and feelings of our karate when we don't have a partner. Yes, well, that's so true. That's one of the things I want to talk about today is how, we're in this COVID thing where we can't train. I can tell you now, if you want to set a 15-minute block of kata stamina training, it will blow your mind. You'll never look at kata the same way again. Urs Tigray. Kata is an abbreviation of katachi, meaning shape or form. No, that's not exactly correct. It's close. Your kanji for kata there is a little wrong. This is the correct kata. That's the kata. That's the kanji I think you were trying to do with your first one. It's slightly different. But the second one, katachi, you're right about that, Tigray. That is the common kanji for katachi. But often it can be a little frustrating because some people confuse the two, and they say katachi when they really actually mean kata, but they are slightly different. They similar meaning but different. But I'm just going to do a check for you. So the katachi one, see, it's confusing because the meaning is very similar, but and so there is a connection there. I guess kata, katachi, obviously there's a connection, but the where are we? I've lost myself. Here we go. The first one, kata, is the first one, kata, that we use for kata is it kind of represents an entire shape of posture or movement, whereas katachi, the other one, represents a kind of the form. So when you're describing something, you say it has a square form. Okay, the confusion comes in because of that word form. I believe that some people call them forms. Kata, they refer to kata as forms, and I think that's where the confusion lies. But they're two separate kanji. They might have a little bit of a connection, but anyway. Yes, but see where Mike's comment. It's the form of your kata. Yeah, that is one way to look at it, and this is where the kanji confusion can come in. But it is, in a way, it captures the form of a series of techniques. Okay, and so, but anyway, we're getting a little bit off. We're digressing, talking about that, the kanji. Okay, so there's a section in my book I've written called Kaisai no Geni. Kaisai no Geni is an Okinawan Goju term. Yeah, that's good, Gaz. See the way Gaz describes it there. That's one of the ways that we do good kata training. It's not exactly a tabata, but it's a tabata concept. People use the word tabata for that type of training. It's not actually, but 35 cycles of 30 seconds. Yeah, it can be so good. I mean, you can, and this is the beauty of kata, okay? You have the physical, the technical, the mental, the spiritual, if you like. If you want to make it physical, you do what Gaz is talking about there. You say you set yourself a goal of 50 kata, non-stop, as hard and strongly as you can. And if you can do it on sand, that's even better because it takes a lot of pressure off your ankles and so on. And then bang, you go. And you do 50 non-stop. And you ki loud when you finish a kata, you count them off. Or you can set yourself a goal, 30 kata with push-ups, sit-ups, and squats at the end of every kata. What we used to do, Gaz, you may have trained with us down at the park, at the outdoor dojo at Currumbin, is we'll do a kata, push-up, sit-up, squats, and we'll do a set of stairs. Get back, kata, push-up, sit-up, squats, set of stairs. So you could do it without the kata, of course. You just do yourself a physical workout. But by doing the kata, what happens is you connect to your technique, and you're forced to be conscious of your technique even when you're tired. And that's really, really valuable. So that's one way to train. A really important point about kata is I think we do too many. We have, 22 odd kata in Kyokushin plus variations of those kata. And they're all good to have and learn from, particularly the sokugi kata, the foot technique kata, which I think really help us in Kyokushin. We have a lot of the circular flowing kicks more so than most of the styles, I would say. And by doing the sokugi kata, they can really help with that. But I think there are probably too many kata. And as a result, people minimize kata. They tend to think, well, it's just something I need for my grading. So if you could reduce the number of kata, so that's what I do. You bring it down to a couple of kata. One is the kata you're focused on right now for your next grading. And two is the kata that you really, really like. It's a kata that if you were asked, put on the spot, could you give us a demonstration of a kata? That would be the kata you'd choose, okay? Yeah, karate, high intensity interval training. That's correct, Mike. Okay. We tried it last year to go through all the kata with 10 push-ups, sit-ups, squats. Yes, that's right. Well, look, if you go through all the kata, and we're talking, like I said, 22 plus variations, so anywhere between 25 and 30 kata, and you put 10 push-ups, sit-ups, squats, and burpees, if you like, on the end, well, you're talking about 250 odd push-ups, sit-ups, squats, and if you want to add the burpees, burpees. There is no way that anyone can tell me that kata training is a waste of time. People who have said kata training is a waste of time just don't get it. And usually, I just wrote a big thing today. I might even have it here, talking about the focus. If I can find it, I'll read it a little bit because it's interesting. But what to focus your techniques on in your child in the dojo. Where is it? Here we go. So general training objectives for pre-teens, early teens, late teens, and early 20s until you stop tournaments. So rather than say pre-teens, teens, 20s, 30s, 40s, it's irrelevant because some guys are still doing tournaments in their 30s and some guys stop in their late 20s. That's fine. So what I describe is there's a whole section here, late teens, early 20s, until you stop tournament training. Well, then if you're still fighting tournaments, your physical intensity should still be up there as hard as it was in your 20s. And then post-tournament 30s. So most people retire from tournaments in their 30s. Some keep going with the help of drugs. That's fine. You do what you do. I don't condone it. But the moment you stop fighting tournaments, the intensity of your training, the necessary intensity of the training changes. Okay? So, and then you've got the 40s, and then 50s, 60s, 70s, and beyond. And each of those has different areas to focus on. Okay, and I won't read them out now. I'm going to send this out to my Patreon group. But anyway, there are certain aspects which change. And, well, this is it. See what Mike Clark said for the Okinawa perspective, karate without kata is not karate. This is why Kyokushin had its reputation as not being, it wasn't accepted as karate. People go, no, we don't, Kyokushin is not karate, it's just a form of kickboxing. They just train in a gym. And then they'll watch someone do a kata and they go, where's he from? The Kyokushin says, what? Kyokushin don't do kata. It's really funny. It's only when you realize that Kyokushin does kata, and there are some really good kata guys in Kyokushin, and especially lately since it's become more competitive. So you have that aspect of kata as well. You do kata for the sake of tournaments. You watch people like Usami Sensei, that beautiful kata exponent from Japan, the one who the female world champion, so on. But you watch her kata in really slow motion, and her kata are specifically designed for tournaments. They're not really good kata. Don't get me wrong, her kata is amazing, but she'll be doing things like she might have to go 1, 2, 3, and instead of going 1, 2, 3, she'll go 1, and does this stuff, boom, 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 and she does it so fast you can't see it. But when you watch the kata in the video, it's awesome. Okay, so she trains kata specifically to win tournaments. People train kata specifically to win tournaments. Other people train kata specifically to find the applications for street fights. Okay, other people will find kata for the flexibility, and this is a really important point. So I'll get to it in a sec. But what you want to do in a single session, and we'll do a bit in a second. You take one kata and then one specific flow of techniques out of that kata, and you analyze it deeply as you can, and you start to experiment. And then you have to experiment in terms of angle change, moving forward. So, for example, when the movement, let's say, for example, Geksai Dai. Give me a sec for my legs to wake up. I've been sitting in Seiza. But you look at, say, Geksai Dai, for example. Okay, so you might just, I got a T-shirt on today, forgive me, guys. So you might, let me just move this back a bit. So one principle that you may want to look at is in Geksai Dai, you move forward with a block. Well, that's kind of, and even in Taikyoku 1, you move forward with a block. Geksai Dai, you move forward with a block. So one of the principles that was said to be a hidden principle is whenever you're moving forward, it's an attack. It doesn't matter what the technique is. So even when you're moving forward with a downward block, even when you're moving forward with an upper block, a block is a lock, is a blow, is a throw. So that block, if someone's coming in on you and you want to block it, well, then you'll move back at an angle. And I use the word block very carefully because I don't believe in blocks. The word uke in Japanese means to receive. It doesn't mean to block. But block is a very convenient translation, so I understand why it was chosen. But, we start off with Taikyoku, with the Geksai Dai. So we step off 1, 2, 3. Okay, and then you're stepping forward again. You're not stepping back here. You're stepping forward again. There, okay? So you have to define the principle you're working around when you train. And one principle is whenever I am moving forward, I am attacking. Whenever I am moving back, I am defending. Seido, Kaikan, Karate, Kudo, as well as Byakuden, hardly ever have any kata. Those are much closer to, yes, you're right. They're all, and what they did is they tried to second guess Sosai, I think. All of those styles have been strongly influenced by Kyokushin. In fact, Seido Kaikan was started by Ishii Sensei, who was Ashihara Karate, and we know that Ashihara Karate was out of Kyokushin. Kudo, of course, Azuma Sensei. He's Kyokushin plus judo kind of thing, if you want to look at it that way. And they do away with the kata style, but I've got to, man. what happens when you retire from fighting? What happens when you retire from tournaments? You know, there's only so much you can do without kata. And that's where it's frustrating for people who have narrowed down their training to kata-less training. And then they get a little older and all of a sudden they realize that maybe there was something in that kata after all. So we have, for example, spiritual, mental, physical. We have Shingi-Tai, mental, technical, physical. We can break kata down into that. So you can do kata, for example, Tai Chi. The Tai Chi form is a kata, but it's clearly not designed to get your cardiovascular fitness up. It may help it, of course, but Tai Chi will definitely help your agility. It'll definitely help your flexibility, particularly through the spine and so on. Well, that's right. It's Mike mentioned that. Oh, it's Paul Nelson. Good to see you, man. That's nice of you to come on board. Paul's a good friend of mine who's been in the judo game for forever. It's like, yeah, the frog in the bucket. You know, I remember reading a story about an American Indian tribe that lived on the east side of a mountain range in what is now like California, and they lived on a lake. It may have even been, Lake Tahoe or somewhere like that. And there's this Lake Tahoe is beautiful, so you can imagine how beautiful it was, and you'd never want to leave there. And for them, Lake Tahoe was the enormity of any expanse of water, but they didn't realize if they just went over those hills and walked a little further, they'd hit the Pacific Ocean. So their sense of yeah, good on you, Paul. Thanks for coming. So their sense of enormity is different. Well, it's like that with kata. Like Mike says, people dip into kata. Even at Hombu, I remember people would go, "Can you show me this kata? I've got to have it for my second dan grading." They didn't. There was no connection for them about kata, and this is why it's so important as instructors to make that connection. So, first way to look at kata: physical training for conditioning. So, as Mike Lorden says, it's a form of kata, HIIT, high intensity training. So, do a kata, push-ups, sit-ups, squats. A kata, push-ups, sit-ups, squats. You can also transform the kata into, and this was Dave Pickersgill, Dave Pickthall, not Les Pickersgill, Dave Pickthall from England showed us this in '88 when he came and trained at our dojo. You have what they call the fighting kata. So you'll start here. You go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, and then you do the kata normally, but then you can do it in a fighting kata. So you free it up and you hit 1, 2, bam, bam, bam. And you're doing the kata. You roughly keep the angle, you roughly keep the technique. So you go block, step, but now we go block, step, like that. So you're doing the block punch, and then you're spinning around, back, and then you're coming down, 1, 2, 3, and you're turning the kata into fighting form. Okay, so that's a really good way to train. You do the kata once with normal technique, and then you do the kata again. And that turn can be a throw as well. So you can convert the kata into fighting. Then you're down, push up, sit up, squats. Then you do it again. Like Gaza says, you can turn it into like a Tabata workout. You do that for just 5 kata to start with. Pick 5 kata and then add on the fighting form of it. And then when you finish, do 10 push-ups, sit-ups, squats. Then another kata, then a fighting form version of it. Then 10 push-ups, sit-ups, squats. Have yourself a great workout. And then keep adding on to it as you... Richard Kimura. Everyone's so glad to see you here. For those who aren't aware, Richard went through some pretty serious health issues and good on you. We stressed contact to the chest. No Kumite for you then, Sensei Richard. Pacemaker, artificial valve. Wow. So be Kihon and Kata. Well, look, perfect timing. Here's a perfect example. Sensei Richard's been involved in karate his whole life. He has a health issue. And we have one of our lads is similar to Sensei Richard, Aaron. If you're watching, Aaron, g'day. Aaron ended up having a hole in his heart. So he had open heart surgery. I mean, that stuff's horrible. Like, rip it open, fix your heart. So he was told he could never fight Kyokushin tournaments. So when he came back to training, he had really heavy body armor on for a while. So that's what you're going to be doing, Sensei Richard. Put on steel armor with little rivets coming out. So every time they punch you, it hurts their hand. And but Aaron realized he couldn't fight in tournaments. So he ended up focusing on kata tournaments, and he ended up winning the Australian title, and a number of other tournaments as well. Plus now he competes in BJJ tournaments as well, you know, where the Rebel BJJ group, we're a Kyokushin dojo that fights BJJ. And last time we got a first and second in one division, and second in another. All the BJJ guys hate us for that. But anyway, not to minimize BJJ, I love it, but I'm just glad to see Sensei Richard, and there's a perfect example with Aaron as well of his heart condition. So good to see you, Sensei Richard, and please take care of your health. So good to see you back. So physical. Kata done with technical accuracy, kata done with a fighting concept in mind, followed by push-ups, sit-ups, squats. Okay? Then you have the spiritual version, which I guess the ultimate of that is the grand ultimate, the Tai Chi exercise, you know, and that is a form of moving meditation. And there's nothing wrong with that. You can do that. I love doing that with Tensho. It becomes a form of moving meditation, but you need to be careful. And the caveat is I don't necessarily believe that meditation is something you can do when you're moving. I think it's a very, very liberal use of the word meditation, because meditation has a very specific meaning, which is abused a lot, but it's very difficult to get the depth, the deep, super deep level of concentration when you're moving. You can't, because your energy is going through your body. Your energy is going out your limbs. For meditation, you need the energy to come back inside and up the spine. So it just doesn't, you can't do it that easily. But there's nothing wrong with doing that. Your focus is simply on the Tandan. You focus on the Tandan. You forget about everything. You just focus on your breath and your flow of the movement. Look for decreased resistance through the movement. Look for concentration here and your breath. Lose the sense of resistance through the body. And if you want, you can do these things at double. Then you can change it to expansion and contraction of the spine. So you can treat that as a form of focus on Tandan. Okay. Then there is another really important aspect of kata, which is the research side. And this is where I think a lot of Kyokushin people have a little, good on you, Richard. Mahalo to you too. This is where we have a little conflict, because, like I said, when I was training at Tsukuba University, the Kyokushin guys would get in and train really hard, and then the Wado guys would come on and train really beautifully. But I know that if it came down to 5 of them versus 5 of us, we would have smashed them. But observers would have just shaken their head and gone, oh, that wasn't karate, that was just brawling. Well, really, what is karate if you can't apply what you're doing against a non-compliant opponent? having said that, the beauty of what they used to do was the way that they would research, and I call it the research kenkyu, kata kenkyu. I'll type that for you. Taking a lot because I can't see the keyboard. Kata no kenkyu. Okay, so that's a research. So it is important to add that aspect, and that's the aspect that has been missing in Kyokushin, is the research aspect. You've got to research it. Sven, it's good to see you all the way from Tromsø, the northernmost dojo in the world. Okay, so for research, the way I do it is this. Take one kata, take one flow out of that kata, and then take one aspect or attribute. So it might be your posture, it might be your grip. That's really, really valuable to think about when you do kata. The more you do it, the lazier your grip can become unless you focus on the grip. So you can literally do a whole session where you do nothing but focus on your grip, and you tell yourself, I'm going to consciously keep my grip strong through the kata. And there are some kata, like Taikyoku-ichi, where you do not open your hands. Taikyoku-ni, you don't open your hands at all. So that is one aspect of your research that you can do. You take one kata, one flow from that kata, and one aspect. And that can be posture, it can be tightening the fist, it can be your gaze, it can be your sense of energy coming from the hara. Okay, and I'll talk about that in a bit. It can be your stance. Okay, and you can just focus on that, and then you can play with it. So you ask yourself, okay, if I'm attacking when I'm moving forward, let's pick a kata. Let's say Geksai Dai. Okay, so one, you pick a principle, and I'm mentioning some of these principles in my book, but I go into it even more deeply in the Budo Blueprint book coming out later this year or next year. You take certain principles, and one principle is, and this is not my original principle, this is a principle which Mike Clark could probably talk more about it than me, but the simple principle of when you move forward, you're attacking. When you move back, you're defending. So even though the move forward may be a block, technically the mindset is that it's an attack. Now that upper block becomes an elbow or a forearm jolt right across their chest. Okay, so you take one flow. So let's take Geksai Dai. 1, 2, 3. Okay, and we play with that. What do we play with? Okay, let me focus on my stances. Forgive me, my knee won't allow me to do kiba. And that's the point. When you do kata, it's age specific. Age specific. So when, for example, you're nice and young, you have a nice, see, I'm having a lot of trouble doing kiba. So you have a nice kiba. But as you get older, you turn your feet into shikodachi, and it'll allow you to maintain a much stronger stance. So there's nothing worse than being halfway. It's like, that's a middle punch, that's an upper punch. But that's technically a middle punch too. But when I do it in a grading, what am I telling my instructor? Is it middle or upper? He doesn't know. So I have to, so what we say is in a grading, to demonstrate you know that it's a middle punch, you have to come down off the shoulder. To demonstrate you know it's an upper punch, you have to come up off the shoulder. Even though the difference between an upper punch and a middle punch is the width of a fist. Okay? So it's the same with kata. You have to know which stances and how to do the stances. And as you get older, it's very easy to go, well, I can't really do Zenkutsu anymore. I can't do kiba, so I'll just stop here. That's halfway between the two. What you need to do is you go, look, I can't do kiba stance. So what I'm going to do is change to, now when I do the kata, I'm going to do shiko, let's say. Or if you don't want to do shiko, that's fine. Sometimes you turn the Zenkutsu, for example. If you can't do a Zenkutsu, I can do it that way. I can't do it this way. So you can do the same kata, but you turn it into a Sanshin stance. Like this. See, I'm just looking down at my stance to make sure I'm doing it good. There. See that? So now I don't have to go Zenkutsu. I can go, and doing that can change the way you view your kata, because if you're in a crowded space and everything I say just reminds you of 50 other things. Remember that the line of a kata is not designed to introduce you to a whole bunch of different people fighting you. So it's not like I turn here, there's one guy, bang, took him out. Oh, here's someone else, bang. Oh, here's someone else. Bang, oh, there's someone else. Bang, oh, I'm trying with all these people. Okay? The reality is, one, I remember when I was training at Hombu, and Kyokushin had a bad reputation because their head and the techniques, this is their middle punch. But when you train at Hombu, you realize why, because they'd have 60 people in a room the size of this. Literally, it was about the length of this garage. And if you punch straight ahead, you'd hit the guy in front of you square in the back. So you couldn't punch ahead. So what they do is they'd take their technique off to the side so that the other guy's hand had come here, so you wouldn't hit each other. Okay, so there was method in their madness. Well, you've got to make sure that you know what you're doing. So the embusen, the line of a kata, is often designed to allow you to do a lot of movements in a small space. And we've all done it. I guarantee you've done it. If I'm heading to here and there's a wall in the way, instead of going one and then bang, punch my hand through the wall, I'll often go 1, 2, and I'll change feet. So I'm limited in space. So instead of stepping through, I'll switch. Well, that becomes a new movement of a kata, and someone goes, oh, yeah, no, I watched him, that Quinn guy, he doesn't do the karate correctly. He does it like this. You don't take into account the space. Well, this is what we have to remember, that Japanese dojos are very small. And quite often, the way the katas were designed was to allow them to move in limited spaces. So don't get caught up in all this, it's exactly this angle, that sort of thing. The two angles that you have to be caught up with, generally speaking, are 45 degrees and 90, and that's simply because the human body is round. If it was square, you'd only have 90-degree angles. But because the body is round, sometimes we step off at a 45-degree angle for here. So the shape of the body determines the embusen, the line of the kata. The other thing about the kata is you have it in your head that we're not fighting more than one person. We're fighting one person, and as you turn and change angles, you're simply reacting to their movement. This reminds me of Karate Kid 2 when Mr. Miyagi taught Daniel LaRusso the taiko drum technique, which was combined block and defense. I don't remember the movie, but that is a good analogy. Then he applied it simultaneous block and punch against Chozen. He's in Chozen. Yes, so there you go. That's kosaho, I think we call it in Kyokushin, the simultaneous block and defense. Also, for those who are interested in kata interpretation, I really mean the way of kata authors from Goju. But do you remember who wrote that, The Way of Kata? I'd be interested in that too, Torbjörn. Yeah, so look, there's so much out there. Okay, so let's keep going. Well, let's say we choose one kata. We choose, what was the one? Geksai Dai. Okay, so the movements are 1, 2, 3. Okay, and then we can do that over and over. You can 1, 2, 3, 3, and then 1, 2, 3, and you can stop there. You take a flow of just a few techniques, and then you loosen it up a little bit. 1, 2, 3, and remember when you're moving backwards, you're blocking. When you're moving forwards, you're hitting. So even that upper block, as you move forward, you experiment. A block is a lock, is a blow, is a throw. What can I do about that block? Yeah, sure, it's a block, but it's also a heck of a jolt across the chest. You hook the hand on the shoulder, boom, 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 like that. You can drive them backwards at the upper block. And it also takes that arm out of commission, essentially, because I'm not going to be able to hit you with that. The only thing is this one here, boom, and then you can pull that shoulder, turn them around. So when you turn around in a kata, you're turning someone with you. Remember that. You think, well, what's a turn do? Yeah, I'll look for that. What does a turn do? Well, a turn is a throw. A block is a lock, is a blow, is a throw. Where there's I have another cute saying. I say where there's a twirl, there's a hurl. Where there's a turn, there's a throw. Where there's a twirl, there's a hurl. So as I go from here, 1, 2, 3, I'm going to turn now. But if I'm thinking in terms of two people, I deal with him, move here, it's not realistic. But what might be more realistic is I step through here, 1, 2, and as I step back, I take this guy with me. That hand pulls him off balance, and that block then becomes, it can be a setup for a throw, it can be a setup for a, what do they call a fireman's throw, that works really well. Or the turn simply works to throw him down. 1, 2, 3, and then I go here. 1. See, so I've blocked him there. I take his arm, and then it can be a throw, and also Dolgari if you like. 1, 2, 3. So I'm turning a flow, which is a block, a punch, a block. Now let's think about it. Now it becomes a forearm jolt, a punch, and when I turn, a throw. Okay, so a block is a lock, is a blow, is a throw. So now we've gone from 1, 2, 3, 2. Now we're starting to 3 it up. Boom, I'm moving forward. So now I'm not only blocking it, what Tigray mentioned there, the simultaneous block of defense. I can be, boom, that's all I'm doing. He's throwing a big right at me, bang, I'm covering up. But even as I cover up, I'm driving the point of my elbow or the jolt of my forearm right into his chest, into his neck, into his jaw, into his face. Okay? Or if he's a midget, on the top of his head. They're the only guys I fight these days, and even they've got a good headbutt. Okay? So, we're here now. We go 1, 2. Let's analyze that. Boom. Okay? Don't get too caught up in the footwork now. Bang. I'm here. Bang, bang. Bang, bang. And I move off to the side. Bang. Boom, take that guy around. Okay, the same guy is still in front of you here. Okay, boom, hit him with an elbow now instead of a forearm. The upper block becomes an elbow. Here too, if you like. Boom, I'm covering. Look, an elbow right there. Boom, elbow up. Hit straight away. Turn, grab him, pull him around here. Hit him with that elbow. Okay, so the Kenkyu part of it, the research part of it, there are 2 ways. There is 1, analyze the techniques in terms of what the masters who created them may have had in mind, but 2, also analyze them in terms of your own real world experience. Some people have had an awful lot of street fights and have applied an awful lot of kata. I was chatting with one of my mates recently talking about another one of our friends, and he had the most, I'm sure I've mentioned it. It's so funny. Let me just check this. I think it's Joel's. I'll have a look. It's by Lawrence Kane and Chris Wilder. I just checked my bookshelf unless others have the same title. Lawrence Kane and Wilder. There you go. Good. I'll look that up. A lot of good books out there. Okay. But the best research is the research you find through your own sweat, as Solso used to say. But I was talking about my buddy who used to love kata, and he probably had more street fights than anyone in the world that I know of. I mean, he had over 2,000 street fights before he retired from fighting at about 30 years old. But one night he just decided that his next encounter on a door was going to be straight out of one specific kata. So he was doing a Nai Hanshin kata. So he was kind of doing this one, this kata here, Nai Hanshin 1. Bang, 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 bang. These sort of movements. Now he had decided he was going to do The next guy that he had trouble with on the door, he was going to deal with it through Nai Hanshin. But it was so frustrating to him because every time he'd go to move across, the guy had changed angle. So he'd have to change angles. Then the guy had changed angle and he was moving across. And finally he got to finish the guy because he just chased him down. But he kept the angle of his kata the whole way. I think that's a really funny story if you could visualize it. Yes, Nai Hanshin Teki. You can do the research and you play with it and you open it up and you free it up. From here, 1, 2, 3. Okay, so moving forward means that's also a block. Could be a lock. Bang! You capture his arm right there. Bang! I've got his arm. I bring it through. And now, if I had 2 men, I could show you a partner. I could show you, but you turn it into a lock and a turn at the same time. Okay, so you free it up, and then you're playing there. Boom! Some guy attacks. Bang! He could be attacking from the front here. It doesn't matter. You're just going to move off to the side. That's part of the Kenkyu. The technique is a left, a right, a left. But what happens if he comes at you from this side? You know, maybe you want to move all the way back there. Or if he comes at you from the front, you move off at that angle, so you're still attacking to the left, okay? But instead of attacking by turning to the left, you adjust to the person who's coming straight forward towards you. You block, there's your upper block. But it's also a forward, a jolt. Knock the arm down, hit them. Okay, and the gate umbara could be a hit in the groin as well, or it could be a takedown straight from there. Lots of could be's. That's the whole idea of research. So you play with your kata. You play with your kata. It's really important. The next thing that you do is you have to consider one aspect. And if there's one aspect that I really think is looking at, it's the aspect of the visualizing the energy coming from the tanden. And it's like you have a cord, an energy cord pulling you from the tanden. And I guarantee that you'll notice a measurable difference in your kata if you go from just doing the kata with your consciousness nowhere in particular. Okay, and the worst thing is in front of the mirror because your consciousness goes into your image. So you have zero feedback in your body. Everything's over there in the image. But when you do the kata, you have to think somewhere. Most people are thinking of the technique. Okay, but the next time you do kata, concentrate on the tanden and visualize everything coming from the tanden. So as I move left, I'm not moving from my foot and then my arm. I'm moving from my tanden. And what happens is it will give you an incredible sense of stability in your movement. Because if you focus your energy too high, this sort of thing happens. If you focus your energy too low, the disconnect comes. It's good to do that to start with, especially beginners. Move your feet first, then your hands. But gradually, as you get improved, the timing changes. But if you put your concentration at the tanden, it's right at the center of physical and psychical energy, so that when you move, the movement is balanced. We start here. I'm thinking of tanden. As I move, everything is rock solid and stable, and the timing is good. In Geksai Dai, think of the tanden. It's very easy in Geksai Dai because everything is up. If you don't concentrate here at the tanden, your body will rise up too much. But if you think in terms of the energy at the tanden leading the movement, what happens is you get the stance and everything is strong and stable. I've got to be so careful with some of these movements because my knee pops out of joint. But if there is one takeaway, it is the importance and the value of focusing at the tanden during your movements. And it doesn't have to be anything funky. It's not like there's some magic going on. All you're simply doing is put your consciousness here as you move. And you can do that. There's another point. You know, you can concentrate on your grip. You can concentrate on your posture. and again, I go off on tangents, but posture is so important. As you get older in karate, your posture will get worse if you're not careful. And you think you're doing the technique, you think you're doing good technique the way you were when you're 20, before you know it, you're doing this just because of habits. So it's really important to focus on posture, and kata is a good way to do that. Focus on your posture, focus on your fist, focus on your spinal angle, your dominant head position. But a good one is focus on the tanden as you move. Focus here. All the movement comes from there. And what will happen is you'll get a sense of connect between the lower and upper body, and a sense of connect between the mental projection of the technique and your actual physical performance of it. Yeah, and there you go. I mean, like, might as well, you better hope your opponent knows how to attack. That's what happens if you get fixated on the actual technique you're doing. You know, I'm turning left doing an upper block, so God help me if the guy throws anything except an upper block kind of thing. That's how silly it is. That's why it's a really good principle to think of when I'm moving forward, I'm attacking. If you're defending, you're not going to move forward. If he's attacking, you're going to move back at an angle, or you're just going to, it's very rare that you will move in to block something. And this is why in Taikyo Koichi, the first movement we teach, Gedan Barai, we teach that as a knee tap. Bang, hit the knee there like that, or it can be a groin shot. Okay, so the tetsui into the groin is just as good as a Gedan Barai. Or if you want to be realistic about it and treat it as a block, well, then what you're going to do is move off the angle backwards there like that, and then throw the punch. Okay, so, and then like Harry says, you visualize the bunkai. We should be doing that essentially anyway, but that comes into the Kenkyu part of it, the research part of it. Is so now I go, okay, well, what is this flow? I'm going 1, 2, 3. Well, what's a good bunkai? What's the application for this? The guy attacks, I'm covering. Remember the old Enke Gyatsuki, Shito Mawashiyuke, Mawashiyuke. They all have this important covering the head here, covering the danger part of the neck and the head there like that. Okay, so you can treat that with this Geksai Dai. You go, boom. Well, that upper block can be actually an upper forearm jolt as you cover the danger part of your head. You're doing this sort of thing here, so that right hook, which that overhand right whack is about 70% of the start of street fights, So what you want to do is research the bunkai, the application. Boom, stepping under there. Boom, stepping off. So we step back into Sanshin and turn. Right, well, that can be stepping off the line. The punch comes, whether the punch comes there even. Boom, stepping off the line and hitting with the reverse punch, all the one motion. Now the upper block becomes this, there like that, there. Or it may be Pinan 2, people Pinan 2 here. If you're blocking, well, why do you bring both hands up? Well, it's very natural. Most techniques in kata are quite natural once you analyze it. And they're defending against your natural techniques, and you're creating natural responses. Patrick McCarthy has a really good phrase for it. See if I can quickly find it here, but I've got it written down somewhere, I'm sure. Give me 1 sec, it's really worth. Patrick McCarthy, the drills and defensive routines recorded responses to habitual acts of physical violence. I love that phrase. Habitual acts of physical violence. Principle for technique. So said Chomo Hanashiro back in 1930s. Geez, you're a lot older than I thought, Mike. I wasn't around then. Each technique in kata should have a minimum of 3 applications. That's a really good way to look at it too, but what Mike said there. But principle before technique is 100%. It's like give a man a fish, you feed him for a night, teach him the principle of fishing, you feed him for a lifetime. Well, it's the same. in grappling, when I teach grappling to guys, I say, all right, here's the situation. You've just been knocked on your butt and some guy's trying to deal with you, put pressure on you. What are you going to do? And then I'll let students play with it for 15, 20 minutes, half an hour. Yeah, indeed. You let them play with it. I say, look, here's a situation. This person is doing this to you. What are you going to do? And I'll give them 15, 10 minutes, 5 minutes, doesn't matter. I'll give them time to think about it. And generally what will happen is they'll come up with a movement based on some principle. And then what you go is, okay, now that you've played with it, let's look at a principle of movement here. You've just been sat on your butt. The principle is, if I'm flat on my back, I'm in trouble. So the first principle is, I want to get off my butt. So, boom, I've just been sat down, or maybe I was already sitting down. Boom, I don't want to be here. So there's a big void here. So the first thing I need to do is get off my back. We call it oi boys. Off my back, on my side. The easiest way to do that, connect my knee and elbow. And look, watch this arm. I hit the ground with my elbow, and then I hit the ground with my hand. And that lets me come up, and now I have a strong frame. So the situation here, trying to defend, is vastly different to the situation here, trying to defend. I've closed this void. And if he pushes me back or he knocks this out of the way, then I can maintain this cage. So now when I go back, I have this protective cage here. And I don't want that to open. So his objective then becomes, from just smashing me, now he has to separate my arm and leg to create the void which I've closed. Well, that's a principle. So you get people to play around. What happens? You've just been knocked on your butt. Well, maybe as you get knocked on your butt, you just keep rolling. Boom. And you get back up again and take them down. That's one principle you can play with. You accelerate the movement. As he pushes you, you fall backwards, and then you're ready again, like a ninja. See that? I was a ninja when I was 5 years old. I used to watch Tombe the Mist. Okay? That's one principle, accelerate the momentum. Another principle, close the void. Another principle, off your back, on your side. You can combine those, off your back, on your side, close the void, and move. And when he comes in, accelerate the momentum. You have a body of knowledge there based on principle before technique, as Mike mentioned. And he did start very early. Each technique encourages him. Yeah, look, that idea too, Mike Lord's idea. We like to play with a similar thing. We like to look at each technique as a block, as a lock, as a blow, as a throw. So each technique, for example, when I throw a technique out and my hand retracts, well, I tell myself that I'm grabbing some part of him, grabbing his hair, grabbing his collar, even grabbing a fish hook, grabbing his neck like that. I did that to a guy once. I grabbed his neck and pulled it in and hit with an elbow. So the grab, the close your fist and pull towards you is a way to break their balance and use that too. So like Mike says, each technique should have a minimum of 3. Sometimes I have to admit, sometimes I'm frustrated because I can't find as many applications in one technique that I'd like, but the concept of seeking to find a block, lock, blow, and throw in each technique is very expansive for the mind. It frees you up. Okay, much of the recoil. Yeah, and you can use that recoil for a setup of the technique, like Harry said there too. So Geksai dive, where we go here 1 and step up 2, but don't go 1 and stop. Use the tendon reflex. Every time you have a movement which takes you to the extreme of the range of motion, you have a tendon reflex. So you pull back. So it might be, I'm pulling back here, boom, bang, and I use the tendon reflex off my ankle and off the spine. So I have what I call arc of tension. Left knee, right shoulder, right knee, left shoulder. So as I step off, boom. See that movement? As I block there, or as I drive my elbow into his chest, the rest of my body is setting up for a tendon reflex. Boom, that movement there, tendon reflex. And then you combine that with the spinal rotation. See this movement here? Sometimes I think in Shitoryu, Taniha Shitoryu, they use this concept of the double hip movement really beautifully. So you step back, boom, bang, boom, and you use that. Well, there's your point of research for the next 15 minutes. Step back, boom, how can I feel that? And I get this tendon reflex. And then when you use that tendon reflex and time your punch with it. Okay, so that's part of the research aspect. Now, age. Age is very important too. When you retire from tournaments, you get more into kata, and so you should, because it takes your karate much deeper. But you have to be very, very conscious of your body. So later, as you go through the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, yes, that's what it is. I just call it the tendon reflex off the back ankle. We use it all the time. Yeah. We use it. We have what we call the split. The split is something I'm fairly confident I introduced into Kyokushin, and the split is doing the splits, but from a fighting aspect, this one goes back, this one goes forward. They serve two purposes. The reason this one goes forward is because it takes me off the target, off the line of flight. So the punching coming in, as I move off, it's there. The back one goes back because I get that tendon reflex that Mike's talking about. So I want to, and that allows me to get the angle right. So it works well with kick too. You block the kick and you come back, or you block the kick. There's a whole range of drills that we do with those tendon reflex, and I'll do them on a video soon. As you get older, you need to respect the aging of the body and use kata for different things. Use it for flexibility through the spine. And the one thing, if you look at old people, and even people who are old before their time, so not chronologically old, but physically old people, I've seen people 20 years younger than me who their body is 20 years older than me. You know, they've just let their body go. So one of the most important things is maintaining spinal flexibility and posture, which means the three locks, being able to elevate the perineum, elevate the diaphragm, and elevate in here. So you close that chin down, good spinal extension, and shoulders back, chin back but up. So these are the things that there's another aspect that you can work on in your kata training. So you have to respect the body. Deep stances hurt the legs as you get into the 60s. So you shorten the stances, but you consciously change the stances. You don't just shorten them and go slack. You shorten them and go consciously short into a particular technique, so that, for example, in Shitoryu, I could be wrong, but there's that 1, 2, 3, 1, where are we? 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and then you step back, bang, boom, boom, in here, and then you step off here, and I could have it around the wrong way, doesn't matter. When you step off there, so 1, 2, 3, 4, and then up. In Kyokushin, we step into Kiba, because what we do is we're stepping behind them and sweeping them over our legs. But in Shitoryu, they step forward, 1, 2, 3. Whoops, where are we? 3, and then kick, punch, bang, and then when they do it, when they turn here, they stand strong and high in Fudodachi. Okay? Well, that has value too. I went off on a bit of a tangent there, but what I meant was in the Kyokushin version, we turn into Kiba. In the Shitoryu version, they turn into Shito. Well, they're different techniques. One's a throw, one's a strike, but this is much quicker. There's no doubt about it. I go here, bang, 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 bang. If I want to turn, it takes much longer to turn there than it does to turn there. Okay, so one of the best ways to research is to look at other styles and the way they interpret the techniques within the same kata. So valuable. But as you get older, respect your hips, knees, and ankles. Make sure you train on a good surface. That's why I love, before Gaza was talking about the Tabata style kata, where you do a bunch of kata push. You do a bunch of kata really sharp, hard, and fast. Do it on sand, soft sand, and it feels great because it gives you a little bit of wiggle room. You can cheat a little bit, but still get the kata strong, and it protects your joints so well. Hey, Ant, good to see you, man. Yes, and that's a fair point. More power in one respect, but power comes from the core. So Anthony's point there, the lower center of gravity gives more power. Does it? Well, I don't know. But it would give you more stability so that when you needed the power for the throw, because I'm connecting their body and I'm throwing them over my leg. But speed comes from the chest, not the hips. Okay? Hips are the source of power, of stability and power, but speed, the source of speed is the chest. So when you turn around and your objective is to hit them as fast as you can in the face, you don't need as much. That speed technique would be far more effective because of kinetic energy, half force times velocity squared. The velocity squared means the faster you go, the more power it gets in exponentially. Okay, so the lower center of gravity has more power in terms of stability and the ability to connect with someone and take them over your body. If I try to pull someone over my body, I'm going to drop and get that low center of gravity, like you said, Anne. But if I want to hit someone, the center of gravity isn't as important as the stability and the speed off the chest. So that's why when that turn, with the speed coming off the chest with a tetsui, a knife hand, a back fist, or a koken, there like that is much more effective than focusing on the stability and trying to hit them from there. Sure, they won't knock you over, but here they won't even see the technique coming. So yes, lower center of gravity means more stability. We know that from every movement we do, but a higher center of gravity and the power coming off the chest means a faster technique. Okay, so don't forget, particularly look at Shitoryu karate, some of the beautiful kata. I'm just wondering, Kusano ha Shitoryu. Oops, why has it gone into Japanese mode? Let me change it. Kusano ha Shitoryu. Okay, so I don't know if they have any kata online. But if you go to YouTube, I'm just doing a quick search even as I talk. This is the group that my buddy Greg has been training with, and they're the ones that I did that weekend kata seminar with. And they were called Kusano ha Shitoryu. And from what I saw on that day, they have good kata. So even as I'm talking, I'm doing a little bit of a search on YouTube to see if I can find anything with them in. Here we go. Yep. So let me just paste that in for you. It's probably worth looking at. There you go. Check their kata out. Are we talking about the same person, Mike? Is it Kisano or Kus? Because the one I'm with is Kusano. Kusano. In Japanese, it's written like this. That's their name, Kusano ha Shitoryu. But it may be the same person. But I'm not surprised because he may have been a student of Tani Sensei. Tani Sensei was incredible. One of my regrets in life is not having had an opportunity to train with him because I've seen the Shikokai guys in Melbourne, Paul Mitchell and people like that. Yeah, well, there you go. So he was a good. It makes perfect sense because the Shukokai guys were fantastic, and that's another area of incredible research. Why does Shitoryu do it standing? We do it in Kiba. Think about it. It's like guys in Kyokushin. Even within Kyokushin, you've got Taikyo Kuich. 1, 2. Other guys will go Taikyo Kuich. 1, 2. And they'll have that arm raise up. And some people go, that's wrong. It doesn't, you don't do that. And then they go, no, you do it like this. No. And you got a fight in your hand. Well, no, they're both right, but you have to understand why. The hand staying down leading into that is a speed thing. Bang, bang. The hand coming up is a power thing because I've taken my arm down. Now I have to raise up to hold them at arm's length. Maybe they've thrown sand or salt or alcohol in your eyes and you can't see. You put that arm out right in the middle of the chest. You know exactly where everything is so that when you throw the punch then it's right at the end of your arm. So one of the best ways to research is to look at the way other people do the kata and never say, that's wrong. Always think, well, that's interesting. I'm going to look into that. There's that famous story about one of the Kyokushin guys, I think was in Okinawa, or might have been in the Kodokan Judo. And he was doing something and the instructor walked up and said, that's really interesting. Why are you doing it like that? And he said, because that's the way I was taught. And the Japanese guy looked at him and went, I thought you were a lot smarter than that. You see, so you have to know why you're doing anything. And then if you have a reason and a principle behind it, everything's acceptable. Like Solsai said, there's only ever one correct way to do a technique, but if the way you do it knocks them out, that's the right way. Solsai would never, ever say it's wrong if it's effective. The purpose and intention changes and the technique changes too. Well, I would word that different probably, Mike. If the purpose intention changes, then the technique is changed by the change of purpose intention. No, I don't teach weapons. I've done bow. I have a Jo. My favorite weapon is the Jo, and I play around with the Jo. I've done all that stuff over the years, but not anymore. Simply because I recognize that my karate is empty hand, and as much as I know kata with weapons will improve my technique, I just don't have time. I'm struggling as it is trying to find time every day to do all the technique without weapons. I just haven't got time. And so when I see guys with 25 black belts and, I just don't know. I take my hat off to them. They must be training 30 hours a day. Okay. So I want to really wind up, but before I do, I want to just cover 2 points and 2 points alone. The word uke. Well, yep, good on you, Ken. You just arrived in time for the juicy part. So the word uke is translated as a block, and I firmly believe that it was translated as block out of convenience because it's a one-word block is a great way to translate the word uke, but the uke does not mean a block. It means a receipt, how to receive something. So when someone gives you something, you uke toru, you receive it. When you're doing a demo with two guys, one is the tori, the one that's taking the technique. One is the uke, the one who's receiving the technique. So uke means receive. And if you remember that, even in your training, remember that there's a famous quote that Solsai loved from the founder of Tai Chi Chuan, Zheng, Master Zheng, I think. And receive a blow like flowing water. I love that. He would receive the blow like there was nothing there. And if you ever watch anything to do with some of those old guys, they'll just put their arm softly on your arm. And we do a similar thing when we grapple. When remember we talked about you play a game where you don't want them to touch your head. So you simply connect your hand softly. If I tense up, they get around it in a split second. But as soon as I just go soft, and you find the spot on their arm that is most effective. And if it comes on the outside, often when you're on the back, this is technique, which I'm sure I did with Josh the other day. If I didn't, remember this one is a ripper. But I could be here, someone's putting pressure on me, And if you can imagine their arm, as soon as you can see the back of their tricep, as soon as you can see the tricep, all you do is you continue that motion and you push it up. And if you catch just on the tricep tendon, you catch them just on the tricep tendon, it's like it doesn't take any effort whatsoever to control. It's almost impossible for them. But if you go here, they get out. If you go here, they can strengthen out. It really is just a very subtle thing, just on the tricep tendon there. Well, it's the same when I'm doing the softer stuff, or when you receive the blow like flowing water, if you could imagine. And that's where the Chinese pushing hands, kakie in Okinawan karate. If you practice that properly, sometimes I think the Japanese approach to, and the Okinawan approach to training is all hard, but there has to be a time for the softness. And I've learned that later on for when I grapple, because when I grapple, I'm most effective when I go soft. When I'm tense, even a youngster can get past me really easily. But when I'm soft, you just respond to everything they're doing. Makes all the difference. So that's the first thing I wanted to mention, is that uke as a word is not useful as block. As a word, it's useful as receive. So you receive the technique. And if you think about that, everything changes. How do I receive that technique? Because what comes next is most important. The other thing too is that one area that I think Kyokushin could really, really advance more and more in is two-man kata drills. And we call it yakusoku kumite. Yakusoku kumite is, we'll just go set movements, punch, 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 block, 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 counter. We like Sambon kumite. Yakusoku kumite is pre-arranged sparring. And one of the best ways to develop your ability in kaisai, in bunkai. So the word bunkai, let me type it in. Am I in Japanese mode here? Bunkai. That's bunkai. Okay. But there's also another word. I don't know if I'll find it in, because it's actually kind of like an unusual word. The word kaisai no gendi. I know I'll do it this way. Sometimes the easiest way to. So this is kaisai. See, bunkai and kaisai. Bunkai means to break down the applications, to compartmentalize, to pull the kata apart and analyze a particular area. Kaisai is more, that's a word which is probably less known to Kyokushin people, but more commonly known to Goju people, because the phrase, even though my research shows that it was used quite widely in Chinese martial arts, even though it was a slightly different application. But kaisai no gendi, if you have a look closely, the bunkai, the kai in bunkai and the kai in kaisai is the same kanji. So that basically means to analyze and break apart. So kaisai no gendi is a principle of research into the technique of a kata, where you pull it apart and look for the application in that kata. And I've written a whole section of it in the Budo Karate Masayama reprint, not in the first one. But one of the best ways to do that is do two-man drills. So if I am doing a kata and I'm stepping aside, blocking that punch and stepping off at an angle, well, then work in a two-man drill with someone. So you have them stand here, 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 here. You have them stand different directions, and they throw a particular technique, or they grab you in a particular way, or they throw, whatever. It doesn't matter. All fights start with a kick or a punch, or a grab and a throw. Okay, so you can analyze both. One of the best ways to look at bunkai is this technique here in Geksai Dai. So I'm stepping back, blocking, punching. Well, what if he's grabbing me? Okay, maybe now what I'm doing is, as I step back, bang, I'm breaking that block and hitting him there. Okay, so I just wanted to mention those two things. Gone over time as always. Remember, two-man drills. Take a flow of 3, 4, 5, maximum 6 techniques in a kata, and work it with a partner and get them to attack you in different ways. And what you will find is that different techniques will work better for you in terms of Patrick McCarthy's concept that I love, where he says that the drills and the routines that you do are actually in response to habitual acts of physical violence. Okay, so that's why they can say statistically 70% of the street fights start with an overhand right or something like that, because that's an habitual act of physical violence. Okay, so it's really important to look at those things. Yeah, and judo too. Judo, all judo kata are two-man kata as well. Makes a lot of sense, and it's an area which I think Kyokushin will get into more from now on. There's a little hint for you. But anyway, guys, thank you very much. Hope you enjoyed that. Look forward to see you on Friday. Bugger. Let me see. I've got the final version. Let me see if I can access it on my iPad so I can show you the final version. I'll just send it through to my iPad right now. I'm going to send this off. Open, share, airdrop. Beautiful. Hang on, maybe not so beautiful. I just wanted to show you, I mean, I've shown you versions of it, but this is the final version of the cover of the new book. Isn't that beautiful? It's different to the old one. We've got a new photo, which is the unique photo that has never been seen in many circles before. And that's the new cover of the book of the second vision. So I love it. That my good buddy Willie Schultz, graphic designer, who designed the first cover, he also designed the second one. So that's very exciting, getting very close. Thank you, everyone. Us. I hope you got something out of that, and I really appreciate the input of everybody, because we've got some pretty high-graded people here. It's so good to see Kimura Sensei back again after his operation. I hope he's safe and well. Harry, good to see you. Daniel, good to see you. You're in my video that I'm sending to my Patreon crowd, so keep an eye out, Daniel. Thanks for today. Frederick, Us, good to see you, man. Mike, Us, thank you for your input too. Raj, Us, thank you very much. Dhanebat. Damien, Rachel, good. Sven, Us, thank you for coming. Thanks, guys. Where are we here? I just got lost there for a sec. Yeah, the cover's beautiful, and the book, I'm really excited about the content of the book. I couldn't be happier. I'm just, Us, good to see you, Carl. Didn't I realize you're there. Ken, Us. Thank you, everyone. See you on Friday at the same time. Us, appreciate it. Thank you very much. Us.